Hello and welcome to the news with Wavelength Tuition. I'm Nathan, Director of Education here at Wavelength.
And I'm Anthony, Director of Operations. Here's your quick roundup of the latest education news parents need to know and what it could mean for your child's learning.
First up, the government is expanding free before school breakfast clubs. So they provide 30-minute morning sessions with food and supervision before school starts.
So, is this just about food or do we have to consider other things?
So it's about routine as much as it is about breakfast. So these sessions help get children ready to learn, improve behaviour because they're not so hungry. They reduce morning stress for families as well, particularly useful for those who might be more vulnerable. And so, yeah, the government wants another 2,000 primary schools to sign up to the programme.
If this is before school actually starts, who's going to be responsible for the kids for
Yeah,
well-being?
yeah. So that is definitely an issue. Schools are struggling to retain and recruit teachers as it is, and the head of the head teachers union has concerns over funding, staffing, and physical space in school buildings as well. So that's definitely a concern. Next, there has been £200 million allocated to send teacher training.
Sounds very positive. How's it being distributed?
Well, it's not so much the distribution that people worried about. It's the thing is because as with breakfast clubs, there are concerns that there aren't enough staff to actually deliver this. So people aren't so concerned about the distribution as who's going to deliver it because there's not enough staff, and then who are they going to deliver it to because there's not enough staff, kind of
Mm.
across the board. So some families are kind of still relying on interim support and external agencies and things like that. Kind of on that note, actually, our next story is that union leaders have warned that that teacher strikes may be inevitable this year because funding isn't good enough.
Yeah, it doesn't sound positive. How bad is it looking?
So earlier, for the first last couple of stories, I mentioned schools are struggling to recruit and retain staff. Well, they're also struggling to afford the staff they currently have at the same time. So I know of multiple schools who are understaffed and making redundancies at the same time. For example, there's an academy chain in Birmingham where staff are walking out on strike of 20 of their schools, for example.
Yeah, to me, it doesn't make sense. The teachers are already on full timetables. I don't quite understand how they could teach more lessons. But really, how could a school be understaffed and then making redundancies to staff that they have?
Because well, they can't afford the staff that they do have. So schools are going to find ways to have to find ways to reduce the number of staff that they need. And because the system is already kind of strained, that means that the quality of education is going to get impacted. So we're looking at bigger class sizes, less time for students to be in lessons, so they might get sent home, early each Friday or something
Mm.
like that. But at the same time, teachers will be having to work more, so more marking, more hours, less time to prepare, and so the quality of lessons just won't be as good.
Do you think there's any other solution that we that could be come up with rather than just sort of slash the teacher costs?
The government has to adequately fund schools, or they can't
Mm.
function. Stuff costs money, and someone needs to pay it. So the media always, whenever teachers go on strike, they always make it about pay, and pay is always an aspect of it. But it isn't the main concern that teachers have and that unions have is about funding for the schools, so that they can offer an excellent education. It's pay is actually much lower.
Mm.
It's a secondary thing. It's about the funding from the government that schools get more than
It's,
anything
it's,
else.
it, I definitely feel like it's a bit about work-life balance as well to ensure that teachers have that.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. The better funded a school is, the more generous they can be in terms of not just money but time that teachers have to prepare, and so if they, that will naturally improve work life balance. Okay, next headline. the Children's Wellbeing in Schools Bill is being passed through government. It's progressing through. It covers attendance safeguarding and wider school policy. It comes off the back of a recent safeguarding practice review panel, which highlighted that children experiencing harm outside the home are not likely to be enrolled in school or have massive attendance gaps of some form.
Yeah, there seems to need to be a translation here between what this bill is and what does this mean for parents. Do you let us in to know what that is?
Yes, so ultimately this bill sets out expectations for school to keep children safe and support well-being, and it reinforces attendance and consistency in school practices. So parents might expect to see kind of firmer guidelines around attendance and things like that. Schools might be a bit more kind of on it with that kind of thing, but it also targets children who've vanished from education, to make sure firstly they're getting the right education outside of school and they're not being kind of groomed or exploited or anything like that, because there's a bit of a grey area in education where if someone is enrolled in a school but they just don't turn up, they can kind of fly under the system, and so this kind of addresses that. Okay, next up, students this year will be able to access GCSE results digitally this summer, using the Education Record app.
Yeah, I'm not a fan, I'm not gonna lie. I remember getting my university acceptance online. I feel like it changes the experience of going and opening that brown envelope. What do you think that students are going to feel nowadays?
So it may to an extent, but these results will only be available later in the day. So students will still have to go into school to get the results from their teachers, and do all of that. The main thought behind this was actually to reduce admin and printing pressures on schools, which the government estimates will save about £30 million. But if the schools are still having to print the results and put them in envelopes, then I'm not sure how it achieves that. But anyway, moving on. So from getting results on an app on your phone to not being allowed them in schools, the Education Secretary has written a letter to all head teachers in England, encouraging them to enforce a full phone ban during the day, including break time and lunchtime. She wrote to say that it is not appropriate for phones to be used as calculators or for research. In her letter she wrote that, both inside and outside of class time, with the government issuing official guidance on that as well.
Yeah, I have been looking up some research on this since last month. It turns out data does appear to be on their side, just about. Outcomes are seemingly improved in schools when phones are banned, especially with low attaining pupils.
And how strong is that evidence exactly?
Yeah, it's not great. There's papers that go both ways, and it really depends on how old the students are when phones were and when phones were there. It was before TikTok and Instagram Reels, short form videos, which is a big consumption. But the impact does seem to be measurable for those who are on those social media platforms to be negative.
So we need to take that research with a pinch of salt then.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. It's interesting. More studies haven't been done on this. That it's kind of the only stuff around is kind of out of date, and because 10 years ago,
Yeah.
the
I
internet
think it
wasn't the
goes
same.
back to the old education research problem, which is we don't want to jeopardize any student's education through research.
Yes, yeah, it's very difficult to ethically do that. Good. Right. Alongside the ban of phones in schools, there's growing debate around banning social media for under 16s. The Department of Science, Innovation and Technology are directing Ofsted to examine schools' mobile phone policies and how effectively schools are implementing them. What do you think of that?
Yeah, it's interesting that they seem to be putting this ban onto schools. We've heard of recent developments in Australia and now also in Sweden. I've heard of some developments with social media that they're talking about the same banning. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see why and how they're going to put this pressure onto the schools.
Yeah, that is interesting, and I've seen this news story about it in Spain as well. So it is spreading. I feel like this shouldn't be an education story because this is kind of outside of schools, but it's interesting that they've kind of put the onus of that onto schools, give them another kind of thing to do. So the General Secretary of the Head Teachers Union told the BBC that school leaders need support from the government, not the threat of a heavy-handed inspection. And so it's interesting that that's the way they're kind of choosing to tackle it. What are the possible benefits of a ban, anyway?
Yeah, so going back to some of that earlier research looked at, it could reduce distractions, improve sleep, and help focus on schoolwork. There's also massive mental health benefits from reduced screen time overall and reduced exposure to social media.
Yeah, I can see that. Okay, so along with focusing on phone policy enforcement, Ofsted are generally going to be putting more stock in behaviour culture and consistency in schools.
Yeah, I'm not sure I quite am up to date to this, not being in a school all the time. Is there a big behavior problem that teachers are calling out?
Um, it has been seen that behaviour is getting worse over the past few years, and there's a few schools. One I used to work in who have recently gone on strike over behaviour, and that the leadership in the school seemingly powerless to do anything about sort of poor behaviour. It's it's particularly difficult for students who want to learn but
Yeah.
are constantly being disrupted from doing so by the loud minority that don't. Luckily, I work in a school at the moment where behaviour isn't a problem, but like I said, I have worked where it is before, and it's very, very difficult to do your job and teach, to the point where not only students but staff can start feeling unsafe as well, which is why they end up going on strike about it.
Yeah. I feel like this could lead to big changes in the rules. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, so school Ofsted is a key concern for schools, so they're going to be reviewing policies. Parents will see stricter and probably see stricter enforcement of stuff as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if you're suddenly hearing more about behaviour or getting children getting more detentions, things like that. This is likely why.
Mm.
Okay, on the subject of behaviour, everything links together today. Guidance, more guidance has come out for schools, recommending them to not use at-home suspensions, except for the very most serious behaviour.
So, what do they do instead?
So they have to use interventions that will keep the student in school. So rather than giving them a suspension, which sends them home, they might use something like internal isolation. So at least they are kept in school, separate from everyone else, but they can be given work to do and then sort of watched while they do it.
So, that makes sure that people stays in school the majority of time, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. The concern is if you've got a student who is suspended a lot, all that's really happening is they're just missing loads of learning time. And although being isolated internally isn't as good as being in the lesson, it's better than being at home because at least they can be given work and then that is monitored more closely. I've also taught students before who would behave badly just so that they could get suspended and sent home. So it stops that as an issue as well. And finally, our last thing for today is the national curriculum and assessment reforms continue following a major review. What areas are they focusing on, Anthony?
Yeah, so the idea is to modernize the national curriculum. It was last updated in 2014. So they need to improve maths and oracy skills from an earlier age and lay the curriculum out in a more logical order to ensure that it's more inclusive, increase student choice with a broader range of subjects and qualification options. The updated curriculum should be starting to be taught in 2028, and this is a big change across all year groups. What do you think the impact is going to be on schools?
So I think for parents, they're not really going to notice any difference, sort of day to day. But what it is a big help to teachers because the current curriculum can be kind of quite vague and open to interpretation. When I've been mapping curriculums to it before, sort of mapping lessons to it before, it's quite difficult to know exactly how into detail to go in certain areas. So having it more logically ordered will be a big help to that. My one worry though, so that kind of part benefits teachers, but my one worry is sort of this broader subject choice. So while that sounds like a very good thing, and in theory it is, for example, I teach science, and I know that they're going to have every student in the country do triple science and take combined science away as an option. And firstly, if you don't want to go into science beyond GCSE, you don't need to do triple science. So they'd need to significantly reform how much content is in each science in triple science. But it also means more teaching hours, because it takes longer to teach it than it does to combine, because there's more stuff in it, and so you'd need more teachers. And as we've already talked about, we don't have enough. So, so it's money and it's manpower that we need to implement this.
Yeah, it definitely sounds interesting though, because I feel like there could be some new subjects on the rise,
Yeah.
especially with the amount of technology developments that I don't feel have translated into schools yet. So I feel like we need to discuss this further in the podcast this month. What do you think?
Definitely, absolutely. That is everything we've got today. Anthony?
Yeah, education policy is always moving quickly, but support at home is still the most consistent factor in learning success.
Absolutely. Whether it's routines, reading, or extra academic support, small steps can make a big difference. So if you need any help or advice at all, then do get in touch with us here at Wavelength Tuition. Thank you very much.
Thank you.